Hello and welcome to another episode of the Wizard Kid podcast. Today we're going to be covering the chapters Norbert the Norwegian, uh, Ridgeback,
Ridge
and
Racer.
The Forbidden Forest.
And I'm probably
Um,
going to get angry because these chapters kind of suck.
yeah, so they're kind of tied together because they're both, like, one of them is basically the fallout of the other.
Yeah.
Um, However, before we get to that, we're going to be starting with some comments from last time. We're moving this to the beginning because it probably makes more sense to start with them.
Yes.
Um, So the first thing that I want to point out, or rather comment that I want to highlight, was from David Jarvis, who said that when Snape calls Quirrell out on his hocus pocus, he always assumed that he was referring to Quirrell trying to jinx Harry's broom, which actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
didn't
I hadn't
think of
considered that. That does make sense because Snape was definitely aware of it happening, and I guess at this point he would have no idea why Quirrell is just randomly wanting Harry dead.
Indeed, yeah.
And then yeah, there's just that whole like rivalry between them about getting past Fluffy and all that.
Right. Someone was wondering if Hermione ever used the time turner during Prisoner of Azkaban to like go back to the first two books and do shit like getting Harry a present, which could like she could have gotten it from Hogsmeade in the future, or rather, actually no, because you can't transfer.
I'm assuming this was a joke post, but I like the thought
Yes,
of it
probably.
anyway.
Yeah, it's kind of infeasible because you have to live through the entire time again. You can't go back forward. So,
Unless it's Cursed Child, but we don't talk about that.
oh, I see. I mean that I know that broke the rules with the time. So.
Yeah, a little bit.
Let's see. Someone else suggested that the reason Harry doesn't get health pickups in the books is because Hermione was collecting all the chocolate frogs scattered around the school, put there by the game design.
God.
um,
Yeah, I'm disappointed that we never get to see the bean room
trading.
or the
Oh yeah, the fucking bonus bean room as well.
yeah
Or just like the random dungeon challenge things that they have to go through to use their spells.
God.
Uh, Someone said that the Philosopher's Stone does these multiple things because they're all examples of, or at least most of them are examples of basically deconstructing matter to a basic form and then reconstructing it into something else. Doesn't really explain the Elixir of Life thing, but yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like I understand if it's not just lead into gold or whatever. It's like you can turn anything into anything else. That part makes sense to me. I still don't get what that has to do with like an immortality potion, unless it's like revitalizing your body's cells to be new again or something. But I feel
Yeah,
like
I
that's
don't
kind
know.
of a stretch. I don't know.
I have no idea. I have written like there's a story thing I'm doing for D&D that's to do with immortality, but I don't think there's any similarity of ideas involved, so I don't know. And then finally we got a comment from Eddie Mikhail, which says KGRRQ #VYN.FYI. And I just thought
Oh,
that was a
good.
really interesting insight.
I didn't realize one of those survived.
Apparently.
There's usually like freaking 3 or 4 of them per video, and I will either delete them immediately or they'll just get deleted by YouTube. Good to know. So I did my usual sweeping of like changes, which again is basically just me
Yes.
looking at a website that does this and sorting out which ones I think are noteworthy.
Mhm.
We once again don't really have any additions to the various counters going on, which is kind of weird. But there was one instance of an unlocalized Britishism, which I'll mix into the rest of these that were localized. The one that was not changed was Hagrid saying, what is it? Don't go rabbittin about it in here.
Huh.
I've never heard the term rabbiting. Apparently that's a British slang for just like blabbing, I guess. Like,
Oh, okay.
let me make sure that's what it is again. It's talk at length, especially about trivial matters.
Ah,
Yeah, I don't
I
know.
see.
So for the other changes, we have revision or revising being turned into studying,
That makes
which
sense. Yeah.
yeah, I had only ever heard of like revising when I started talking with you. I didn't know that's what it was called there.
Yep.
There's a weird one here where like in previous chapters they've done this a bunch, so I usually don't draw attention to it, but there's a bit where Ron's talking about dragons, and he says like, our in the American version he says our kind have to give them like memory charms to make them forget. In the British version, it's our lot, and it's like they go out of their way to stop to avoid using the word lot in the American one, even though I don't think it's really that weird. It's like I don't think people here really say it, but it's I don't know. That one just
You think
seems
it would be
weird to
comprehensible enough?
nitpick. But they're not consistent about it because even just reading through these chapters, I saw several instances of them still saying like "you lot." So I don't know, and I find the change also just weird because saying "oh our kind have to do that" almost seems like kind of elitist, which I
Yeah,
get is the case anyway because wizards do usually view themselves above muggles, but it's like
Ron doesn't. So
it was just the choice of words sounded weird. Um,
Mhm.
there's a part where Hermione's giving them all like schedules and stuff, and it says they're driving them. It was driving them mad, and in the American version, it's driving them nuts. Which I didn't realize that was a change. But even reading that the first time, I'm like, that seems oddly informal. It just seemed weird to read that. Um, here's a weird one. Let me find the context of it. It's okay. So yeah, it's when they're going into the forest. Filch says in the British version, um, okay, no, I have to give proper context for this. So yeah, he's like Draco's freaking out, like we can't go into the forest. There's dangerous things in there. And Filch says, "That's your lookout, isn't it?" And they changed it to "That's your problem." Like, what the hell do you mean that's your lookout?
I haven't heard that one.
And the last one is just writing lines became to copying lines. Why they felt the need to change that one, I couldn't say.
Huh.
So,
Yeah.
moving on to actual contents.
I would think it was called writing lines in America too. No?
I don't know. I mean, I've never been to a detention, so I don't know
Yeah, me
what they
neither.
call it here. Like, I've heard of the stereotype of like, just write this thing like 100 times or whatever, and obviously we see that with
Yeah.
Umbridge later on and all that. But as for the actual terminology, I think either is valid. Don't know why they changed it.
Yeah.
So getting into this, it takes at least a little bit before it starts getting bullshit. So let's enjoy it while it lasts.
Yeah, so it's mentioned that like Quirrell seems kind of pale and sickly or something like that, and I just wonder if like is he just stressed or is Voldemort actually draining his life force or something like that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't have an answer to that one. CG
It kind
drama.
of ties into like how Voldemort is even threatening him in the first place, other than just being verbally abusive, I guess. Like, what does he have on him? He's just magically affixed to the back of his face. You'd think that Quirrell could just go to some kind of like, you know, go to Dumbledore or something and be like, "Hey, the Dark Lord is on my head. Can you get him off and help me?" But he doesn't.
Yeah, yeah, I'm not really sure. It's like maybe Voldemort has control over his body while he's asleep or something,
Maybe.
or can just overpower him at times anyway.
Mm.
Don't
Yeah,
know.
that would make sense actually.
There's also a bit early on in the chapter where it's like they're under the assumption that he's having to deal with Snape constantly and is like just barely kind of holding himself together, and so Harry's giving him like an encouraging smile every time they pass, and I like that thought of it's like, yeah, you go, you beat him, like,
Yeah.
which kind of works because he is having to fight Voldemort. So
Right. Yeah.
it also says that they every time they pass by the third floor corridor, they listen through the door to see if Fluffy is growling. And it's like, ah, yes, good, he's still alive. The stone is safe. It's like, is this dog just constantly growling? Like, how long do they stand here listening to it? Does anybody ever call them out on it? Pointless things to wonder.
Yeah, I suppose. And then we have them starting to prepare for their exams, which Hermione is. It kind of made me laugh actually because says that Hermione is like doing color coding and shit and putting in like bookmarks and tabs into stuff. I knew several people that would do that, and I could never do that at all.
Yeah,
Like
I would
I
not do
barely
that.
revised in the first place. It took all my effort to just look over the material again once, let alone multiple times and like highlight the important parts and all that shit. There are people that do flashcards. Like, I'm like, this is way too much fucking effort.
Yeah, I pretty much never did any of that stuff. I was the same way where it's like, if I knew the material, then I knew the material. If I didn't,
Yeah,
then I would look over it like once. If there was something that
right.
I knew I struggled with a lot, I might try a little bit harder with that, but
Yeah. I think what's usually like, at least nowadays and from my experience, is put forward as like the best way to revise or study is to just do practice exams. I don't know if that's much of a thing over there, but over here they usually make on like the school website, they'll have a place you can log in or whatever and download like old papers to try questions from.
yeah, no, I don't think we had that. Um, like we did have some stuff with, like, I'm trying to think in terms of like actual online schooling, like obviously not like remote schooling or whatever, but
Well, I imagine
like,
before that they would have like, had copies of old papers that you could request from teachers or
oh,
something.
maybe. Yeah, I don't think we ever had anything like that.
Hmm.
But I'm trying to think if we even really did much online anyway. I think we could turn in assignments through a website, and that was about it.
Yeah, some of this is going to be
Um,
a geographic thing, and some of it's going to be like an age thing.
yeah, but yeah, that shit drives me nuts. I'm with Harry and Ron on this one. It's like, you do you. We're not gonna. We shouldn't have
Right.
to be forced to study by your standards here.
Right. And she tries to make them like timetables and shit. There's no way I could fucking
Yeah, and
do
there's
that.
this thing where she's like, they're like, Hermione, the things are ages away, and she's like, it's not ages, it's 10 weeks. And then like later on, they keep using the phrase ages, and at one point, like, what was the one that I sent to you? It was, um,
Um, it's like a
uh,
second to Nicholas Flamel.
yeah, there was, uh, oh yeah, they're like, she's like, go to Dumbledore. That's what we should have done ages ago. It's like, ages ago, Hermione, it was 10 weeks. No, I don't know.
Dude, that's 144 eggs.
Oops. But yeah, she's freaking out over the exams, which is, of course, completely unnecessary because she's over preparing like crazy for them. Because it's like she's like, you have to pass these to get into second year. It's like nobody has ever failed these. Crab and Goyle
Yeah,
get into second year. I think you're fine.
I was gonna say, like, I'm
Like,
pretty sure the Hogwarts 7-year system is supposed to be roughly parallel to like the 5 years of secondary school, followed by the 2 years of college or sixth form, which is um, supported by the fact that they take owls in year 5, which would be the
right.
equivalent of year 11 when you're 16, and then newts are the equivalent of A levels. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Just hearing about all this shit makes me really fucking glad to be out of school now and not have to worry about this anymore.
hmm
I did like
Um,
1 year of work as part of my degree, and I preferred it so much just because, there was a dedicated block of time during which it's like I work these hours, then I'm off, and I literally do not have to think about work at all. Whereas with school, basically 24/7, I was stressed knowing that I had things that I could be doing right now. Um,
yeah, and that's ties into the next thing here is like, Hermione's freaking out, and then there's the hair, either the narrator or Harry or whoever says like, the teachers must be thinking along the same lines as Hermione because they were also like emphasizing the exams and assigning them more homework. And I'm like, oh, thanks. So it's like, yes, you need to study hard for these. Have some more homework to take more of your time.
I
Like,
think the idea is supposed to be that the homework would be stuff that prepares them for the exams. But still.
I always take it as like, here's more material you have to learn in addition to like remembering
Homework
the
isn't
old
usually learning
stuff.
material, though, is it?
Hmm?
Homework isn't usually learning material, though, is it?
Well, no, it would be the type of thing where it's like, the first however many months of school they cover this stuff, and you have to restudy that to keep it fresh in your mind, plus doing the homework for the new stuff that they're learning, is how I'm
Uh,
imagining this.
well,
But
from my experience, usually as it gets closer to exams, like a month or two before, they'll start focusing on going over old material instead of introducing new stuff. Well, not just old material, but just all the material. And most of the classwork and homework would be specifically stuff like going over that and making sure you can answer the questions and whatnot.
I think we would usually start doing that like maybe the last month of school. Like we would learn new stuff pretty much up until the end, I think. Um,
Maybe 2 months is too much, but like a month, yeah.
Either way, it's just I don't feel like dwelling on it anymore. It's just complaining
Yeah,
about
fair
school.
enough.
School sucks. Um, so they're in the library. Hagrid is suspiciously putting away the dragon book and stuff, and Ron
Yeah.
finds out what the book is about, and he
He's
he
like, dragons!
yeah, he like very casually is like, but they banned owning dragons during the
1707.
yeah, he's like, everybody knows that. He like drops the exact year that it happens and everything, which I find funny because he's not the studious type to be able to normally do this.
Maybe they
So
just
I
covered
have
it in
to
History of Magic.
see what I was assuming is because his brother Charlie is like the dragon person of the family. Like he probably knows all this stuff and has mentioned it, and Ron looks up to his brothers, and that's probably how he learned it.
Yeah, fair enough.
So it's like I feel like Ron learns more through like more. I don't want to say street smarts because that's not the same thing, but it's like he's not the studious type, but he's still smart. It's just he doesn't necessarily get his information from books.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah, they go and see Hagrid, who offers them stoat sandwiches.
So it's all like weasels, right?
Yes. Why does he have weasel sandwiches?
Because
Like
because regular, I don't know.
I just I had to reread that sentence like three times. I'm like, wait, what? Why? Because like, I at first I was like, I thought it said like trout or something, because that would like make a little bit more sense. And then I'm like, wait, isn't a stoat like a weasel thing? Like what? I had to look that up. I'm like, it
Oh my
is. What
god.
the fuck?
I don't know. I mean, Hagrid
So
had like the fucking beaver skin boots and shit earlier. I guess he
yes,
just.
and a moleskin overcoat, which is not actually made from moles.
Ah.
I had to look that up too.
So then, they're talking to Hagrid. They're trying to get info out of him, and Hermione like butters him up. It's like it kind of surprised me because I don't remember Hermione having a knack for that kind of thing.
Yeah,
She's like, oh,
she
you must be like important to Dumbledore. He trusts you so much that he let you participate in guarding the stone. And like Hagrid looks all proud. I'm gonna have to keep an eye on whether Hermione keeps doing stuff like that because I don't remember it.
Yeah, I don't remember. The first thing that I came to mind was actually Harry and Ron doing that to McGonagall to like basically get to see Hermione in the hospital wing in second year. That's obviously not the same thing. Also, this has been going on for a while, and I have to point it out here is just like they keep talking about like, oh, we like Quirrell has to figure out how to get past Fluffy, and it's such this well-guarded secret, and only Hagrid knows. It's like, fucking shoot him. Like, I mean, I'm not even saying like, oh, you should have a gun. Like, you have wands, you have crossbows. Like, just fucking shoot the dog. Who cares? Like, you
Right.
have ways of dealing with this. If you absolutely have to do this without harming it, like, put some sleeping
Yeah,
potion
it's
in
not like
some
it's not like a video game puzzle, right? It's
yeah, it's like put a sleeping potion into some meat, feed it to the dog, bam. Like I
yeah,
feel
it's
like
it's
that would
it's more like
probably
it's more like a
work.
D&D puzzle where it's like you're presented with a situation that's open-ended and you could basically do it however you want it as long as it work.
So it's just funny, like how the only way to get past Fluffy is to put it to sleep, which we don't know yet, and it's like this big mystery. But
Yeah, it's weird.
and the phrasing of getting past Fluffy just reminds me of Harry is bitching about like the stuff he had to do during the Triwizard tournament, and he's like you don't understand what it was like last year having to get past dragons and sphinxes and all sorts of terrible things. And it's like, okay, first of all, it was one sphinx. It wasn't that bad getting past that one. Let's maybe not emphasize that one so much. I don't know. Something about that phrase just stands out to me.
Yeah, I can get that. Um, so they're talking to Hagrid, and they basically notice that he's trying to warm up an egg. And he's like, they find out that it's a dragon, and there's this big, I don't know what you'd call it. There's a whole lot of hoopla about it.
Yeah.
And it's really actually quite funny how irrelevant this is in the grand scheme of
It
things, even for
is.
this book.
It has nothing to do with anything. This,
it, I don't know, like I said, the next chapter is kind of the fallout of this chapter, and we'll get to that. But basically, this is going to lead to them getting in trouble, and they could have gone in trouble in for any number of reasons.
yeah.
And it
So
had to be to do with this fucking dragon subplot. Like,
I mean, and that's fine. Like, it doesn't have to come back later. It's just, I do feel like the whole bit of like Hagrid and the baby dragon is kind of iconic to the first book or the movie at least, and
right?
um, yeah, it just never has anything to do with anything. And it's funny how, like, in Order of the Phoenix, there's the chapter of Hagrid telling them the story of like how he was visiting the giants, and then there's all this shit with Grop, and people like really hate those chapters because they're slow and kind of uninteresting, and they don't really have much relevance to anything. But like Grop at least kind of does stuff. Norbert completely useless.
Grop also gives you a bit of an insight into Hagrid's history, like personal history, right?
Right.
Whereas
This
Norbert is
is
a momentary distraction.
yeah, and it's like I will give it like it's not completely pointless. Like it establishes Hagrid's, kind of living outside of the law, and like it comes back later with Aragog, like how he basically is super enamored by these dangerous creatures and doesn't think that they're that dangerous or whatever. Like it's
Yeah.
part of his personality. It's establishing that. That's fine. But
Now, to be fair, we should mention this, since if we don't, someone will probably will in the comments, that if I'm remembering correctly, he got Norbert, like his want for a dragon was established early on, and then he mentions that somebody in a pub traded it to him, and I believe that this happened in exchange for him drunkenly telling the stranger how to get past a Cerberus, which is relevant because that's how
I
Quirrell
think
ended
we
up
find
past it,
that
right?
out in the next chapter, like after the Forbidden Forest one.
Uh,
I don't remember the exact specific because he wins Fluffy off of somebody in a pub, and then he wins the dragon egg off of somebody, and yeah, I think it was like Quirrell in disguise or something. I don't actually
yeah.
remember. We'll have to
I'm pretty
see.
sure it was an exchange. Like the person asked him how to get past a three-headed dog, and
Right.
he was drunk, so he told him. So it is relevant in that sense. So it's kind of like, I don't know. It's still very circumstantial, though, right? They could have written something around it that
Yeah,
made
it's
it
like
a little
that's the
bit.
thing is I don't have a problem with
Sure,
Norbert being
sure.
in the story. Like, this is fine. It's just it comes and goes in the span of like one chapter. It has very stupid repercussions, which we'll get
Yeah.
to. It's just I feel like the whole thing could have been handled better. And
Right.
yeah, then there's this whole like side plot with like they're talking about it in the Great Hall or something, and Malfoy overhears them, and then
Hmm.
he sees through the window that they have the dragon, and then he's like holding this over their head for over a week, or he's just like,
I'm gonna tell. I'm
yeah,
gonna tell
I'm
you.
gonna tell. I haven't done it yet, but I'm totally gonna do it. And they're like, Hagrid, he could go to Dumbledore any moment. And it's like, why hasn't he? What the fuck is
Yeah.
Draco doing? Like, if he
I
wants to
don't
be a
know.
tattling little bitch, he should have done it already. Like,
And I still continue to be baffled by Malfoy's teacher suck up style of bullying, just because it's kind of alien to me. I'm sure that it is a thing to bully via like getting people in trouble for petty shit, but I don't know. I guess it's inconsistent with my memory of him as just being kind of a more typical like taunting kind of bully. I don't know.
and the best thing about this is like, Malfoy's a dick to a lot of people, but he's especially a dick to Harry. And if this is
Probably out of
supposed,
pride, right? Because Harry rejected his friendship.
yeah, I guess. But it's like, if he's doing this whole thing to get Harry in trouble, like, what did Harry do? This is like, yeah, I could get Hagrid kicked off the school grounds or something, which would suck, but like, why? Why is this his MO? Like, Malfoy, what are you doing?
To be fair, they're 11. They don't have a lot else going on in their lives. This is why people get invested in drama and shit, right? Is because they don't have anything interesting going on.
Right. I like the idea of him like actually going to a teacher and being like, Hagrid has a dragon in his hut, and Harry's been
The
there too. He should get expelled. And they're like, why? What did Harry do? It's like,
yeah, maybe he's waiting for an opportunity for Harry to somehow be complicit in it or something, which does happen.
yeah, they do help him like take care of it a bit, but I don't know. It was
So
stupid.
yeah,
So
on those lines, like, oh, actually, you had something about Ron first.
yeah, so like yeah, they're helping take care of this dragon for a while. They watch it hatch, and then they come back like a couple days later and find out that it's like 3 times bigger than it was the first time they saw it. I'm curious how big this dragon gets because they never really say.
Mm.
But yeah, they're like taking turns going down to help Hagrid take care of it and stuff. And there's a part where Ron goes down by himself and is apparently like feeding Norbert like a crate full of dead rats. I'm like, that's kind of fucked up. He has a pet rat. Like, I feel like
Yeah,
that would be kind of distressing.
probably. Um,
So yeah,
but yeah,
while all
so
this is,
yeah, yeah, so eventually they're like, okay, Hagrid, we got to get you out of here. They figure out a plan with Charlie Weasley's friends to smuggle him out, basically.
yeah, here's another
But
instance where email or like phones would be great because you don't have to wait several days for this owl to
right.
fly like across the continent to deliver these messages. Um,
Okay,
so
but this gets sorted out. They're gonna go to the tower. Everything is theoretically fine at this point, but I have to wonder, why the fuck isn't Hagrid the one going up there? Like,
well,
he presumably can go around the school grounds at night, and it's also his problem. Like, Harry and
yeah,
Hermione shouldn't have to risk their academic futures because of
yeah,
Hagrid's
I
fucking
have I have several
stupid
problems with
idea.
this because so again, like they're dealing with this dragon. And they're like, Hagrid, this is getting too much to deal with. You have to let him go. He's like, I can't let him go. He won't survive on his own. Oh, we'll make Charlie get rid of him. Charlie will take care of this dragon. And it's like, up to this point, we've learned that Charlie is studying dragons in Romania, not that he's like caring for them. So that's a bit of a leap. But they're like, yeah, he'll deal with this for
To be
us.
fair,
Um,
Ron knows enough about, presumably enough about what Charlie's doing to be like, yeah, he could do that.
Yeah, but I like how they're just like, hopefully he'll just kind of deal with this problem for us. And he writes back and he's like, yeah, just get the dragon up on top of the tower because my friends have to get him and they can't be seen. It's like, all right, why does it have to be at the top of the tower? Why can't they fly down with their stupid like pulley system between the 3 broomsticks next to Hagrid's hut? Like if they're doing this at midnight.
Oh yeah. I can't believe I didn't think about that.
Like it pisses me off because it's just adding this extra work to it where they have to be
Yeah.
super sneaky. They have to get this thing all the way up there, which by the way, there's a sentence in here. How they managed to get the crate back up to the castle, they never knew. I feel like that is the worst sentence in the
That's
entire
just
book.
Rowling avoiding
Yeah,
having
because
to
it's
explain
like,
it.
yeah, so they mention like the invisibility cloak is probably big enough to hide 2 of us plus the crate. So I'm imagining, well, it's 2 of them because Ron gets bitten by this thing and he's at the hospital wing, so it's just Harry and Hermione doing it. So I want to know how big the invisibility cloak is and how big the dragon is, and
Right.
also like how fucking awkward it must be to be shoving this giant ass crate upstairs while having to like balance this cloak on top of you and like not letting it like oh shit, I accidentally stepped on it and it fell off, let me pick it back up.
Yeah.
Like
I'm imagining this crate as being like a meter cubed, so like a Minecraft block. Um, but I don't know.
because I think like the way it was worded, it said that they were lifting it, so like maybe Norbert isn't that big, but there's a
Mhm.
line, it says that I wrote this one down because it was funny, just like Hagrid goes, it's all right, he only got my boot, just playing, he's only a baby after all. The baby banged its tail on the wall, banged its tail on the wall, making the windows rattle, which was just like, that was almost like narrator snark. But
Yeah.
so Yeah, whatever, however big this thing is, it's strong enough to like rattle the windows just by like smacking the wall and stuff.
And for the
But
record, as far as I'm concerned, there's no good reason that it needed to be the tower. Like you point, like I know that you just said this, but I'm just trying to think if there's any other reason. I know she could have easily written this chapter to be they go down there, even in like a plot progression sense, they could have gotten caught on the grounds, right,
yeah.
on the way back from the hut.
So yeah, like I said, they're having to lift this crate with this dragon of dubious size, carrying it up this castle, like however many floors to the top of this tower, and like up these steep stairs and everything. I don't know how the hell they did it, and apparently neither does Rowling, because she just was like, "Yeah, I don't fucking know. You think about you figure it out yourself." And so yeah, so like this entire thing, I feel like definitely could have used some revision. Like, let's maybe not come up with this really contrived way to get rid of this thing. Like,
Right. Yeah, and contrivance is the main problem here, I think. We'll get to that.
so they get to the top and they run into, the way it was described was like they saw shadows of like two people tussling, and it was like McGonagall and Draco, and I'm like, what the fuck? But and McGonagall is wearing a tartan bathrobe, which I assume is dressing gown in the British version.
I
But
think so, yeah.
I like how it's specifically tartan or tartan. I don't know how you say it, because she's Scottish.
Tartan, I think.
And so like she takes 20 points from Slytherin for catching him up here, which let's keep that in mind for later. And she's like, get the fuck out of here. There's no there's no
Yeah,
dragons.
it says dressing gown.
And so then, like, she leaves. They're in under the cloak. They get to the top of the tower. It says that, like, Hermione did, like, a bit of a jig and wanted to sing. And Harry was like, don't. And I like this bit because she's usually so high-strung. It's nice to see her kind of, like, cheerful. Just happy to get rid of this fucking thing. And
And then they're so happy that they forget the cloak up there.
because
somehow.
they're morons.
And then Filch is like, "Oh, we are in trouble," I always think of that as being his catchphrase, but I don't know if he actually says it again. I want to keep an eye on that one.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure he says it in like, this is gonna be really stupid, but in like there's a DVD extra for the Chamber of Secrets movie where you have to like sneak to the chamber and you get caught by Filch and Snape on the way and have to answer trivia questions about the movie to get past them. I'm pretty sure when Filch catches you, he goes, "Oh, we are in trouble."
Yeah, I can't remember if he says that a lot, but I guess we'll keep an eye out.
It just immediately struck me as like, yes, that is the thing Filch says.
Yes. But yeah, so that's the end of the chapter, and it immediately leads into the next one with there is no crime in the world greater than being out of bed at 1 a.m. and being on top of the tower, because why?
Right.
Like, so as I said, she takes 20 points from Draco and then takes 50 each from Harry, Hermione, and Neville. Neville
She's,
wasn't
like,
even
more
fucking
disappointed in
involved.
them.
Like,
Yeah.
he apparently is trying to, like, leave to warn them that, like, Draco's trying to get in trouble, and then, like, finds them on the tower or something.
Right.
So, like, he's totally not involved in this at all. And let's remember, McGonagall does not know about the dragon. She thinks that the whole thing was a quote-unquote cock and bull story.
No, cock and bull story is how you say it.
Yeah, that's what I said.
No, you put emphasis on story. It's very important.
Oh, okay. But yeah, so she doesn't know about the illegal dragon. It's just, these students were out at night. That's unacceptable. 50 points each. And she says, nothing gives you the right to walk around school at night, especially these days. It's very dangerous. Which I find weird because, like, we find out later this chapter that Voldemort is on the loose and... on the loose. I don't know what you'd call him. Like, he's a wild animal that we have to watch out for. But, you know what I mean. And so,
Yes,
like,
yeah.
because she's helping protect the stone and everything, like, you know, they know that there's, like, probably something going on. But
Right.
it was just it was a weird phrase because, like, there's no massive threat this year. Like, if this
Right.
was when the basilisk was loose, that would be one thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a massive fucking overreaction. She's like, three students out of bed in one night.
This has never happened
I've never
before.
heard of such a thing. I've never been more disappointed in students before. It's like, Jesus fucking Christ. Like,
It was kind of like self-justifying, right? It's like if they actually take fucking 50 points from you, then yeah, maybe that would be enough of a deterrent because the students really fucking care about the house cup for some reason.
yeah. Um, God, but yeah, it's like, later on, Ron is saying, like, oh, come on, people still like Fred and George, and they lose points all the time. And, it's like, yeah, Fred and George are known troublemakers. Like, they're talking about blowing up a toilet and all this other stuff, which, to be fair, they hadn't actually done that specifically, but they've probably done similar things.
Yeah.
Like, they're constantly getting into shit, but none of this is as bad as being out of bed at night.
God forbid.
And, like, yeah, I don't get it. And the thing that really sucks, though, is, like, if it was that and then it was over, I could almost excuse it. But then we spend, like, half of this chapter dwelling on how, like, the entire student
Everyone
body
hates him.
hates Harry. They're, like, constantly, like, everybody except for the Slytherins are pissed off because they just don't want Slytherin to win. So, like, even the Hufflepuffs and Ravenclaws are like, well, we can't beat Slytherin, but you were going to, and now you fucked it up. You
And it only occurred to me after writing my notes here, but I'm pretty sure this is supposed to act as like the end of second act darkest hour of the story. Maybe.
Yeah, it's like the whole
There's no
thing is
real
just
substitution for it. Or
yeah, it's
alternative.
just everybody hates Harry now, and like they're at Quidditch practice, and Harry says he's gonna resign, and Wood's like, "What good's that gonna do us? We got to earn the points back." And then the rest of the team like won't even refer to him by his name, and
Yeah, it's like the seeker.
it's like, good fucking god, like
Get over
you're
yourself,
you're
sis.
acting like the kid like broke some massive law or like not even that. It's like you're acting like he did something like really personal and unforgivable here.
Yeah,
Like,
right. It's a bit over dramatic.
it's so stupid. So,
uh,
like it legitimately pissed me off reading this. It's just
okay.
I
See, you mentioned for the past few days that like you were extremely pissed off with these chapters, and I was kind of curious because I thought that there was stupid stuff in this, but I wasn't sure exactly what would get you so riled up. I had figured that you were like mad at Hagrid because he caused this situation in the
that's
first
another
place.
thing actually. I forgot to even mention that. So like, I said in the first episode of this that like Hagrid is like one of the best characters, and I still kind of stand by that because I love Hagrid, but
This is probably the most selfish thing
he
he does.
it's not even though. Like that's the thing is he does shit like this all the time. And
Hmm.
it's part of
Okay.
his charm is like, he doesn't it's
It's like, oh,
basic it's
bless
the
his soul.
equivalent of like he doesn't know his own strength, but it's in terms of like the like friends that he keeps basically. um,
Yeah, he can't help himself.
yeah, he's always causing issues that Harry just kind of tries to deal with and usually gets in trouble for, and then Hagrid just kind of like doesn't apologize usually.
Yeah.
Um, it kind of sucks because I still like the character and I don't want to like
Yeah, I mean, I guess it shows it makes him well-rounded and three-dimensional, if nothing else. But
yeah, but I like this whole thing, he's just going on and on about, oh, like, oh, my poor little baby won't survive on his own, and he's like crying when they have to take the dragon away, and it's like, okay, I get it, like you wanted this dragon for a long time and you're not having to get rid of it, but like you weren't supposed to have it, and now you're making these other kids take the fall for you.
I still don't
And
get why Hagrid wasn't the one to fucking take the
like
dragon, even if they did have to take it up the tower.
like they lose all these points and become like social pariahs and have to go to detention, and at no point is he just like, well, this was mostly my fault, so like I don't know what he would do to lighten the situation, because I'm
I
not
mean,
expecting him to turn himself in like, yeah, I had this
right.
dragon, blah blah blah, but like, he doesn't even apologize to them. That's kind of shitty.
Yeah.
So
It sucks. So then not it's not good enough that they lose 50 points each and they're hated by the school. It's not good enough that they're also getting detention. No, they have to like stew in it and fucking anticipate this detention for like a
well,
week.
they actually forgot that the detention was even going to happen.
Oh yeah, that's
Um,
true. But yeah, I don't know.
so I think we skipped
So
ahead a little bit here.
I wasn't gonna continue with that. I was gonna say yeah. So they're just going about their school life, doing classes and shit, memorizing dates
'Cause that's
again.
useful. Yeah.
And then we have Harry is like, it's all my fault. I gotta not get involved with anything ever again. And there's a couple instances where he has a chance to and then chooses to ignore things, including overhearing Quirrell like seeming to argue with someone, but it's actually probably it's just Voldemort.
Yeah, and Harry's like, I would have bet 20 Sorcerer's Stones that he was arguing with Snape. It's like, well, lost that bet again. But yeah, Harry has this very brief resolution. He's like, I'm never getting involved in anything ever again. I'm only going to focus on my schoolwork. And then like 2 minutes later,
Right.
he's overhearing shit. He's like, oh, what's going on here? But then,
Yeah.
to his credit, he's relaying this to Ron and Hermione, and Ron wants to get involved, and Harry's like, no, we're not doing it. He gives several good reasons why. Um, oh yeah, so hold on, what was the context of this? There was a really stupid phrase here. Wait, was it? Oh, huh. Okay, so in an earlier chapter, yeah, in chapter 13, there's a part where they're talking about like there's all this other stuff that's probably guarding the stone. Quirrell would have done some anti-dark arts spell, is the ways that it's phrased. In
Yeah.
this one, it says Snape's done it then. If Quirrell's told him how to break his anti-dark force spell. What the fuck do you mean anti-dark force spell?
I have to assume that that was like a thing the editor changed, thinking that for some reason thinking that dark arts didn't sound right.
It's just a weird phrase. I read that. I'm like, are we talking Star Wars here? Like, what is this? I don't know. And so, like I said, Harry refuses to get involved, and then he goes back to learning the names of Jupiter's moons, which makes me question again why they have to learn astronomy outside of like divination purposes, because divination's like an
Yeah.
optional class that not everybody takes, and I don't know why this info is useful.
Right.
And I will now randomly ask if you know the names of the 4 Galilean moons.
Let's see. It's Europa, Ganymede, Io, and Callisto, right?
Yes. I was just curious if you know, because I was into space stuff as a kid.
I was sort of, but I don't think I know it from that. I don't know where I know it from. I didn't learn it in school, and I didn't. I don't know. Anyway.
Yes, slight sidetrack there. Like, here we have more fucking like self-pitying. The one that you
Yeah,
wrote.
fucking. It's like she felt they deserved what they got, and I'm like, what?
Well, yeah, because
For what?
yeah, they get their letters saying like your detention will be at 11 o'clock down by the forest, blah blah blah, and it's like Harry and Hermione both felt they deserve what they got. It's like you didn't do anything.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, what? Because they made the mistake of forgetting the cloak in the tower? Because that's like the worst thing I think they did, and that's just out of stupidity.
Like,
not
yeah,
like,
they snuck out of the common room. Like, okay, that's breaking a rule, but
has McGonagall like gotten to them that badly? They're like, oh yes, that was a moral failing on my part to go out at night. Like, what the fuck are they talking about? They did this completely altruistically for fucking Hagrid's sake, because they didn't want him to get fired. Like, there was
yeah,
no bad
which of
intention
course they
there.
can't
What are they talking
admit.
about?
And so now it's like
Right.
I'm really trying to think.
The only thing I
Like,
can think is that they're regretting like the mistakes, like letting Malfoy hear about it or forgetting the cloak. And I'm like, but surely,
well, and
they
they
don't think they
also
actually deserve it for.
and the thing is they also feel really bad for Neville getting involved
Oh
in
yeah,
this,
yeah.
which
And it's
is
like
fair enough, yeah,
was
because
that was
it sucks that he got sucked into it.
right,
Like,
but that's a coincidence. Like they didn't cause that, you know.
yeah, I don't know. It's the whole thing is just so stupid. There's no justifying it.
Yeah, this
So,
could have used a rewrite, I think. I don't know. Like I said, probably just trying to really lay on thick this, depressing tone for the this sort of end of second act, darkest hour type thing. But yeah, so random note here, but there's some really weird vocabulary for like a page where they say the word furore, which is apparently spelled furore in the
Führer,
US version.
I think is what it is.
Oh, I see. Not to be confused with the Führer. Um,
Yes.
and they also use the word scudding.
Yeah, I had to look that one up. It was referring to the clouds like scudding across the sky. Apparently it just means like moving via wind.
Yeah, it's fucking weird.
Like I'm still stuck on the stupidity of this situation. I'm trying to think like, we could have had something. We could have had like Malfoy actually finds them at the top of the tower and they like get into a
They have to run
fight.
away.
No, like they get
That,
into
yeah.
a fight and then they get caught fighting. Or
Yeah, that
like
works.
Norbert like burns down some tapestry and then they get blamed for it. Like have something.
Right.
Like
Yeah. It's very contrived. And actually, this is a point I wanted to talk about earlier, is that I wonder what you guys think in the comments about this, because I believe this is what is called a diabolus ex machina, which is basically where it's the opposite of a deus ex machina, where while that is like a convenient thing suddenly happens to the characters that is not the result of like any actual like established character motives or actions or anything like that, and just kind of happens by complete chance and is convenient for them. Diabolus is the other thing, is the opposite, where something inconvenient happens by random chance to screw them over. And I've heard some people, like sometimes when this happens, I've seen other examples of it, but sometimes when this happens, people get pissed off at it and they call it cheap writing, basically as bad as a Deus Ex Machina. But I've also heard other people say that like this is actually not bad and it's much better because, I mean, I don't know. I don't know how to explain it.
it gives it gives an extra element for the protagonist to have to like deal with,
because
I
it's
guess.
it's more like unsatisfying when something gets resolved by coincidence or chance or whatever. Whereas if something like if a conflict comes up by coincidence, like that can still be resolved in a well-written way. Not that this was well-written, of course, but I mean, I'm curious what you guys' thoughts are, because I've heard conflicting opinions on, you know, basically inconvenient coincidences. But yeah.
So I'll try to shut up about how much I hated that section.
No, it's fair. I mean, it is stupid. I thought it was stupid too.
It's it's a rare instance of me like actually getting angry at part of the story here because
Right.
like there's plenty of things in later books that people get annoyed with. A lot of stuff involving the Triwizard Tournament. Um, what was I gonna say? There's a lot of people hate how like Ron opens the Chamber of Secrets in the last book and like how the diadem gets destroyed with the fiend fire. They're like, these are really contrived. And it's like I don't
Wait,
even
how is the fiend fire contrived?
uh I almost don't
I
want to
guess we
get
don't
into
have
it
to
now,
get
but
into it, but
basically it's like they like the thing just happened to get burned up in it and they're like, oh, this thing also gets rid of Horcruxes. I just didn't feel like mentioning it before. And some people are like, that's fucking stupid. And it's like it kind of is, but
they could have found something else. It's fine. It just made
like
it
they
fun.
had basilisk fangs. They could have stabbed it. It's just it happened to get destroyed by the fire before they needed to
Right.
do that. So it's like
And
with
we're not
that
gonna
one I
get
don't
into
even mind. With
yeah.
that one I don't even really mind. But
We're not gonna get into the parcel tongue thing, but I will say that I don't mind it.
yeah,
Like it's
there
fine to me.
there is actually a very tiny amount of foreshadowing for it, which I will point out
Oh,
when
yeah?
we get to it because I think
Alright,
it happens
cool.
in the next chapter.
Awesome.
But
I look forward to it.
anyway, yeah, moving on from all that crap. So they get down to the edge of the forest, and Filch is being like a massive fucking creep. I'm still like, I don't know why the hell he's allowed to be here. First of all, it's just, I still find it cruel that they're having the squib who like probably wants nothing more than to be able to do magic having to fucking scrub the floors in the school of all these kids doing magic. And so it's like there's that aspect of it, and then also he's just like, we used to hang you from your wrists from the chains and leave you there for days. I wish those days, like I wish we could still do that. It's like, dude, The fuck is wrong with you?
He's like, I still keep them polished in case they...
Yeah, like, why are you allowed to be around children? And so, we once again, I mentioned this in the last video, have this really weird representation of werewolves just being mindless creatures that live out in the woods. And, like, there's probably, like, a good 4 or 5 times in this chapter where they're like, what was that? Was it a werewolf? And Hagrid's like, can't be a werewolf, not fast enough. And so I'm wondering, is this early installment weirdness where she hadn't decided how werewolves work yet?
Yeah, or are they just a bunch of, like, lycanthropic hobos living in the Finn forest?
It could also be that, or it could be, like, you know, we learn later on how, like, there's this huge prejudice against werewolves. Like, do people legitimately just think that they're, like, mindless, like, murderers and not just regular people? Because I think that's kind of what you're meant to think. It's like, maybe. You know, James and Sirius, like, befriended Lupin even though he was a werewolf, and, like, Harry has no problem with it, but, like, the majority of people find out that someone's a werewolf and they, like, won't even look at them anymore.
Yeah.
So, like,
I mean, it's mentioned later on that, like, as the story gets later and later, like, Lupin starts having trouble finding work because people start finding out about him being a werewolf and stuff like that, and it's fucking sucks.
Yeah. And so, of course, with mention of werewolves in the forest, we have to bring up...
there's werewolves in the woods and they're chasing a vampire.
Yes.
But that aside.
So, yeah, so they have to split up into groups, and I can't remember if Hagrid decides this. I think he does. Malfoy goes with Neville, and I'm surprised that Harry and Hermione aren't like, hey, maybe we should not let the bully go with, like, the, you know, the...
Yeah, they were probably like, just afraid for themselves anyway and didn't really think about it, but...
Yeah, like, my first thought was like, oh, Malfoy's gonna fucking scare him or something.
And then, spoilers, he does.
Yeah, it's funny, I actually wrote, because I didn't remember exactly how this goes, I wrote here, it would have been interesting to have, like, Harry and Draco go together, and they could have, like, you know, they'd be forced to interact outside of their usual situations. Oh, well, maybe they figured Malfoy was too scared of the forest to do anything to Neville. And then, yeah, like you mentioned, like, Malfoy does end up scaring Neville, and they, yeah. We'll get to that in a minute, I guess.
Yeah, so, yeah, what I have here is just, you know, they're discussing going into this, they have to find this unicorn or whatever has been killing the, like... There's, like, a unicorn that's bleeding everywhere, and they're like, we have to find if it's dead, we have to find what's been causing this. So we'll split up. Like, 2 of you go with me, 2 of you go with Fang. Nothing will hurt you in the woods if you're with me or Fang. And I'm thinking, like, okay, Fang is just a regular-ass dog. And, like, I know that, yeah, like, you can have a guard dog that can be kind of dangerous, but I don't think it's going to stand up to, like... the acromantulas and, like, all this other shit that's in the forest. And so, like, he mentions this, and then Malfoy is like, well, I want to go with Fang. And it's like, choosing between the dog and the person with a crossbow, and you choose the dog. Kind of an odd choice, but okay. And then Hagrid's like, fair enough, but I'll warn you, he's a coward. It's like, okay, is Fang reliable or not? Like,
yeah.
And so Neville has to go with Malfoy and the dog. I'm sure he feels real safe.
God. So yeah, and then Hagrid's like, all right, we'll send up sparks if we find the unicorn. We'll send up different sparks if we're in danger.
Yeah, he just says, like, okay, practice. There you go. It's like, I'm curious if these sparks are, like, actually spells, or if it's just the type of thing where it's like, you think about red and wave your hand, and it's like, pfft, and then there's just red sparks.
I've always kind of thought of it as, like, what would you call it, like, raw magic, just not filtered through any kind of, like, specific spell. Just random bullshit coming out of your wand, and you can tweak it.
Because I think when Harry tested his wand at Ollivander's, it let out sparks, so it's probably just, yeah. But, I don't know, just something I was wondering about.
Yeah. So then I kind of got stuck on a stupid nitpicky point, because they're like, they mentioned Hagrid has his crossbow with an arrow. And I'm like, I thought crossbows use bolts, not arrows. And so I ended up looking it up. And after about 30 seconds of research, just want to give a shout out to the internet for being so convenient. It took Harry and Hermione several weeks to find the right book to find out about Nicholas Flamel. I was able to find quotes about the difference between bolts and arrows and their use in crossbows from 2 different crossbow experts within about 30 seconds of Googling. But so as it turns out, it seems like there's not that much of a difference. Some differentiate it by size, but a crossbow can technically use both. Apparently most people usually say bolts, but like crossbow enthusiasts are using the word arrow more and more. So it doesn't fucking.
Yes. But can you shoot explosive bolts from a crossbow like in Tomb Raider?
I don't know about that. Possibly.
So yeah, we meet the centaurs.
Yeah, and I quite like these scenes actually. They made me laugh, but it struck me as like, because Hagrid is like trying to get answers out of them eventually.
Yeah, he's just like, have you seen anything suspicious? And it's like, Mars is bright tonight.
Yeah, and it might just kind of seem like a personality thing, but I think it's more supposed to be a culture where like the centaurs don't even really they don't comprehend that Hagrid is like asking about something urgent, and he's like, no, I actually want an answer. I'm not just asking like rhetorically.
Yeah,
I don't know. I found that really interesting.
It happens later too when Harry's riding on Firenze and he's asking him something, and then Firenze just doesn't answer. And he's like, oh, he doesn't want to talk to me anymore. And he's like, do you know what unicorn blood is used for? He's like, oh, where's this question coming from? Like, so yeah, I think the centaurs just kind of don't usually respond to questions well, and worry more about the future and like vague senses of things than like actual specific goings on, which is interesting.
I like that. It gives depth to the world.
The scene of Hagrid repeatedly being like, have you seen anything? Mars is bright tonight. And he's like, oh yeah, how about that? Okay, but yeah, I'm looking to see if you know what's been causing the trouble around here.
Mars is bright.
He's like, yeah, so we've heard. Like they say it like 3 times. And
it'd be one thing if it was just kind of an inane passing thing, but then they leave and Hagrid's like, never tried to get a straight answer out of a centaur.
they don't care about anything closer than the moon. But also I really loved the description of Ronan having a deep, sorrowful voice. I'm just, are you going to shoot me?
I imagine it more like, this world is imperfect.
Mars is bright tonight. It's like, students are you? Do you learn much up at the school? A bit. A bit. Well, that's something. I love this, just this voice I have for this character now.
So we get a reiteration of,
oh yeah, here we go. So yeah, there's red sparks. Hagrid goes to investigate. Hermione's like, you don't think they've been hurt, do you? And Harry says, I don't care if Malfoy has, but if something's got Neville, it's our fault that he's here in the first place. So 2 things here. First of all, he fuck Malfoy, so I agree with that. And also, if something's got Neville, it's our fault he's here. I mean, I can see the logic, but no, it's Malfoy's fault. Because he's the one who was fucking snooping in on them and like holding this information hostage for so long,
right?
And then like, I don't know.
Yeah.
So
like I mentioned earlier, it would have been interesting for Harry and Draco to have to go together and talk for a bit. They do end up going together, and they just don't talk to each other. And I'm like, man, this is such a wasted opportunity. Even if it was just a couple lines back and forth, I think it would have been a good.
Yeah, would have been nice. Instead, we get them walking in silence, and then they see a scary thing, and Draco's like, and fucks off, and Fang leaves with him. So yeah, Fang, real useful there.
Right. So yeah, and then it's
this
like mysterious being.
Throughout this whole scene, it's like something's been killing unicorns. No idea what to do in it. They keep hearing like this creepy slithering sound. It's like, it doesn't sound like anything I've ever heard in this forest before. And it's like this monstrous thing. Oh, it's a guy in a cloak. Like, okay.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, is Voldemort just going along going
God,
like with his
maybe.
mouth.
Um, so yeah, we have Quirrell de Mort, or whatever the fuck this thing is, that's like drinking the unicorn blood. It tries to attack Harry. Frenzy gets in the way. There's this argument between the centaurs because they're bitching at him for being like a common mule. Like, we're not supposed to help humans and all this shit. And one of them says, "We are sworn not to set ourselves against the heavens. Have we not read what is to come in the movements of the planets?" I don't even know what to say about that sentence. It just seems weird that it's like, you know, the future is set according to the stars and the planets or whatever, and we
Like, we're
can't
not supposed to
interfere with
fight.
this. Like, that
Yeah.
that's weird. I don't get why.
I don't know.
Like, if it's already set in motion, then, I mean, what, do they just accept it as inevitable and there's no point in trying? Or is it like, we can interfere, but we're not allowed to? I don't know.
Yeah, I wonder.
So yeah, what the hell is this Half-Life?
Yeah, they're like Hagrid's like
Or I think
no,
it's
It's not
Forenzy.
Hagrid, it's Frenzy. Yeah, Frenzy's like a unicorn is a majestic and pure creature. To kill one like corrupts your heart because they're so pure.
Yeah,
And
it's...
if you drink their blood, it will keep you alive, but it will be a cursed half-life that is not it's not truly living. And I'm just like,
Yeah,
how?
I always
What
wanted
does
to
this
know what
entail?
that actually meant. Like...
Because pretty quickly Harry's like, oh, that sucks, and they're like, yeah, but it won't matter if you get a Philosopher's Stone.
Well, the thing is, he says, like, if, like, why would you do this to live this cursed life? Wouldn't it be better to just die? And he's like, yes, it would. It's like, okay, what the fuck is the cursed life? Explain. I need to know these things. But it's also inconsistent, though, because...
Oh yeah?
Yeah, he says, "Do you know what unicorn blood is used for?" And Harry's like, "No, we've only used the horn and the tail hair." He says, "That's because it's a monstrous thing to slay a unicorn. Only one who has nothing to lose and everything to gain would commit such a crime." And then it says, "The blood of a unicorn will keep you alive, blah, blah, blah. You'll have a cursed life if it touches your lips." So is it the act of drinking the blood, or is it the act of killing it? If someone else kills it and then becomes cursed, and then you use the blood for something but don't drink it, are you safe? I'm wondering, like, where the line is drawn here.
Yeah, it's I don't know.
It's like, I want to know what this curse is. We never find out. It's like the fucking binding magical contract that just never gets explained.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So yeah, so they're down in the forest. Harry finds out Voldemort's at large, basically. That was basically the entire point of these 2 chapters.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
So I
We
just...
complained about this shit and talked for fucking over an hour just to... Okay, Voldemort's back. Wow.
Pretty much. So I just have a few random nitpicky things to point out, as always. So as they're going into the detention originally, Filch is like, "I'll be back at dawn to pick up what's left of their bodies." It's like, okay, fucking asshole. Like, he's just doing this to scare them. But
Right, yeah.
so he says this, and then they do their detention, whatever, all that stuff happens. Then they go back up to the castle, and they're discussing things, like, until sunrise, apparently. So they obviously got back before dawn. I'm curious, like, if they even checked in with Filch, or... I don't know. It's like, it's a stupid thing to question, because, like, who cares? But
Right.
I also like the idea that this detention had to go on for like 7 hours, because they got there at 11, and it's like,
Yeah.
what, like 6, 7 a.m.? When does the sun rise? But,
I don't know.
and as everyone else has pointed out, but I can't ignore this, you've been caught sneaking outside of school at night. Your punishment is to go outside of school at night. Like, what?
Yeah, I guess.
I get that it's different circumstances, but still. It's like I don't know how common of a, like, trope this is, but in old cartoons, or I guess this was a thing in real life, there's a thing of, like, the kid gets caught smoking and their punishment is to, like, smoke the entire pack.
Oh.
Obviously that has been determined to be a bad idea, surprisingly. But it's like, oh, you'll learn your lesson. You want to smoke? Here you go. So it's like, with this thing, it's like, you want to be out of school at night? Well, here, we're going to throw you in the fucking
out
forest.
all night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess it works in that sense. I don't know. Hogwarts is obviously behind the times. So,
Yeah.
anyway, as they're discussing all this stuff, they said like, oh, I thought Snape just wanted to get rich this whole time. I didn't realize he was trying to get the stone for Voldemort. It's like, wait, was that what they were thinking? Maybe you didn't think
Apparently.
Voldemort was involved, but like, I like the idea that they've been going through all this trouble to like, find out who's, find out who's doing this, like, what is it guarding, like, encouraging Quirrell to stand up to Snape and everything, because they think that Snape is gonna just run off with a treasure, and he's like, hey, and I will be rich. Like, it's so petty.
It is kind of petty. The only thing, well, see, the thing is, even if they thought it was for, like, the eternal life, right, like, that would also be kind of petty. Like, oh no, we can't let this guy avoid dying. Like, what? So I can only assume that like Snape is a dick, so he would use this power to do bad things, like to get himself into a higher position of power and like be even more.
Because he's a bad guy.
Yes, basically.
Very bad guy.
So yeah, I don't fucking know.
So yeah, they're like I said, they're having this whole discussion. Harry keeps saying like, blah blah blah, and Voldemort's gonna do this, and then Voldemort's gonna kill me, and Ron's like, stop saying the name, and then like Hermione says, you know who, and I think this is the first time that we see her do this, and it's weird that she's picked up this habit.
Is it? I figured, you know, people probably whisper about, you know, who here and there, and she hears them, and she's like, well, that's what people call him, so.
Yeah, I guess. I know in book 5, she, like, starts saying Voldemort and, like, shudders when she does it and is, like, kind of slow to pick it up. It's weird that, like, somebody who didn't grow up in this culture of, like, don't speak the name already has gotten into this, but I guess I can see it. And, yeah, she gets an early jab at divination being kind of shitty. There's a bit where it's like, the centaurs don't necessarily know what the future holds. Like, McGonagall says that divination is very imprecise magic. And so it's like, we now know that McGonagall hates divination and that Hermione does. And I like how this is being established early on, because it is bullshit.
Yeah.
Even though it's proven to be correct in many cases, it's still bullshit.
Well, they said imprecise. I guess what they mean by that is that it's unhelpful. You can't just be like, oh, this exact thing will happen. It's always like vague bullshit.
Yeah, it's Mars
like,
is bright
it is
tonight.
correct. Yeah, it's correct, but also just really unhelpful and vague, I guess, is the idea.
There's a line that Ferenzi has in Order of the Phoenix when he starts teaching the class, and he's just like, it may take us many years to understand even what we're seeing, and even then it may not be correct. It's like, wow, real fucking useful skill.
To be fair, like, I mean, you know, there's like theoretical physics and certain aspects of science that are like, you know, basically just shots in the dark with very limited knowledge. And, you know, it is backed up by
fair
good
enough.
stuff, but it's still also very imprecise and could all be wrong and, you know, thrown out and replaced with something else later. Like, that is kind of how science works. And I have to imagine that serious magical study is probably not too dissimilar from the scientific method, you know, if they want it to...
Yeah, you know, that actually kind of changes my opinion on that. I always thought that divination was just complete horse shit, but yeah, it's, you know, it's imprecise. It's hard to tell exactly what it means, but it gets some stuff right sometimes.
Yeah.
And then the last thing is just Harry gets
Harry
the cloak
returns
back.
to his dorm room and gets his cloak back.
Yeah, the cloak just says like, just in case. So it's like, I'm now having to wonder, now that we've established that Dumbledore is apparently, like, stalking Harry and Ron, checking out the mirror, did he also know about the dragon? Like, was he there watching them carrying this crate somehow up the stairs? And just, like, I'm just imagining the scene of him just standing there invisible in the corner watching them struggle with this fucking thing and being like, man, sure would be easier if they could levitate it. Oh, well. Then they leave the cloak up and then he grabs it and brings it back to him later. I'm wondering if this happened or if... like,
or if some other teacher found it.
Yeah, because this is the astronomy tower.
To.
So, like, the astronomy professor is like, what the hell is this? gives it to Dumbledore. It's like, oh, well, this happens to be a one-of-a-kind magical artifact that is, like, massively important. So better give it back to the kid that owns it.
Yeah. Anyway, so that was a lot of rambling about 2 chapters that were kind of stupid and pissed us off.
Yeah, it was actually pretty short, too. We're only at an hour 9. But that's
Okay.
I think we said what we needed to. There was a lot of
I agree.
contrivance and me being angry about things.
Yes. Next time we'll be wrapping up the first book, actually, with through the chapter.
I was actually thinking we will just do 1 chapter, and then we'll save the last chapter for another video, because the next one on its own is 22 pages, which is what we've been doing, and it's kind of a meaty one.
Okay.
Like, it's got a lot of stuff going on.
All right, fair enough then. So yeah, next time through the trap door. See you then.